Good evening. Welcome to Brass Tacks. I'm Zaka Jacob. We're starting off with some breaking news. It's an exclusive news break. National Security Advisor Ajit Doval is right now in Russia. He's met with his counterpart Nikolai Patrushev. A meeting with other leaders or with Vladimir Putin, the Russian president, is subject to further developments in Moscow. His visit is crucial right now because, remember, this war is now dragging into its 7th month. And clearly, there is some degree of anticipation and hope, particularly in Western European countries like France and Germany, who are hoping that India will lean on Russia using its influence. Remember, India has been one of the few countries, one of the few big powers in the world, which is not joined in the sanctions against Russia, which was inspired by the West, by the US and its NATO partners in Europe. India has not voted against Russia at the United Nations Security Council or in the General Assembly. So there is an expectation from countries in Western Europe to use India to help lean on Russia to look at some kind of a ceasefire. The question is, will the Ukrainian side agree to a ceasefire? Will the Russian side agree to a ceasefire? Also, India does have legitimate queries and concerns about two things. One, defense supplies and spare parts, as well as, of course, the flow of oil. India, of course, imports a large amount of its oil and gas, and the Russian contribution in India's imports has gone up in the last 6 months. Abhishek Jha tracks the MEA for us. Abhishek, what more details do we have about what else was discussed when NSA Doval met his Russian counterpart, Nikolai Patrushev?
So, Zaka, clearly India and Russia are trying to deepen their bilateral ties, and also they are trying to understand each other's point of view. In the wake of Russia-Ukraine conflict, we have seen in the last 6 months, there has been a clear division in the global space. If we say one is led by US and Western bloc, another is led by literally by Russia and the countries which have not sided with US and Europe. Indian External Affairs Minister has recently made remarks quite a few times that India will have to also look for its own interests while maintaining that the war should cease happening in Ukraine, and there should be all sort of humanitarian aid and assistance to the people who are being affected with this conflict. But at the same time, India cannot ignore its 1.3 billion population and their own energy security interests. So this is why this whole theory of India buying Russian oil and thus keeping Russia afloat to fight Ukraine is something that he has tried to puncture in the past also, and even recently also. Ajit Doval meeting Russian counterpart is clearly a time when both countries will try to understand each other's point of view on regional and global issue. Regional issue is especially important in the wake of Afghanistan. Ever since the fall of Afghanistan to in the hands of Taliban, there has been security threat emanating from that soil. We know recently Ayman al-Zawahiri, Al-Qaeda chief, was killed in Afghanistan. So what sort of security concerns are there, and how both these countries can collaborate and talk further on this issue? This is also one of the important area where both these countries are trying to engage. Ajit Doval happens to be the only second high-level cabinet rank government official who has visited Russia ever since the Ukrainian war or Russia-Ukraine conflict has started, and this clearly shows the kind of engagement Russia wants with India. And also we have seen Indian Prime Minister Modi and having talked on telephone with his French counterpart, where both also discussed Russia-Ukraine conflict. They also discussed global supply chain and food security. So clearly, India is in a position where both sides of the faction wants to be engaged with India, and they also clearly try to understand the Indian point of interest. And probably this visit of Doval to Russia is in one step in that direction.
All right, Abhishek Jha, we'll leave it at that for the moment. Abhishek there reporting for us on this visit of National Security Advisor Ajit Doval to Russia. Meanwhile, the big political story of the day, Housing and Urban Development Minister Hardeep Singh Puri tweeted this morning about how the centre was providing EWS flats to Rohingya refugees from Myanmar. But within hours, he's had to backtrack after a backlash from within his own party and the opposition. The MHA clarifying that no such policy was being implemented and these illegal migrants will be deported. But the Aam Aadmi Party has alleged that this was done in a meeting chaired by the Delhi LG and as instructed to the Chief Secretary, and that the Delhi Chief Minister or the Deputy Chief Minister had no idea about it. The question is, with India not being a signatory to the 1951 UN Convention on Human Rights, what is India's position on Rohingyas? Are they illegals who need to be deported, or are they refugees who need to be accorded UNHRC status? But first, the story so far.
It was confusion galore for the centre today over Rohingya refugees. Hours after Union Housing and Urban Affairs Minister Hardeep Singh Puri tweeted that all Rohingya refugees would be shifted to EWS flats in Delhi's Bakkarwala, the Home Ministry denied any such move and stated that Rohingyas will be kept in a detention centre till their deportation. Then the battle line shifted because the MHA made it clear that it is the Delhi government that wants to move the illegals.
अरविंद केजरीवाल फिर से अपनी तुष्टीकरण की राजनीति करने से बाज नहीं आएंगे। संविधान की शपथ लेने वाले अरविंद केजरीवाल जी अपने कर्तव्यों का निर्वाह करेंगे और देश की सुरक्षा के साथ कोई छेड़छाड़ नहीं करेंगे।
The Aam Aadmi Party claimed that the BJP was conspiring to settle Rohingya refugees in Delhi, which is a threat to the safety of citizens.
हम मोदी जी से कहना चाहते हैं कि हम इनको दिल्ली में नहीं बसने देंगे। नरेंद्र मोदी जी चाहें तो इनको भारतीय जनता पार्टी द्वारा शासित किसी राज्य के अंदर वो बसा सकते हैं।
Since India does not have a refugees policy, Rohingyas continue to be treated as illegal immigrants in the country. In 2017, the Home Ministry told the Supreme Court that continued stay of Rohingyas in India, apart from being absolutely illegal, has serious security threats.
Meanwhile, CNN News 18's Anvit Srivastav travelled to the Indo-Nepal border in Bihar. There are 5 districts in Simanchal which have turned out to be a huge hub for illegal occupants, many of whom have taken up hundreds of kilometers of land which is designated as no man's land. And in no man's land, there's not meant to be any kind of dwelling, any kind of living, any kind of construction. But what he found on the ground is quite to the contrary.
One of the major reasons for the dramatic demographic shift in the Simanchal area is that it runs parallel to the Indo-Nepal border. I'm right now standing on a road that lies in India, but on my left is the no man's land, which you can see is quite heavily inhabited, and across which lies Nepal. After talking to officials in several agencies, be it the IB or paramilitary forces deployed in the area, local police or officers from the anti-human trafficking units or anti-terror units, we have managed to crack the basic modus operandi.
All right, so while there can't be exact numbers on these illegals, the Rohingyas who are there and where they are settled across India, this is what we've managed to garner from multiple responses by the MHA in Parliament. In Delhi, there are approximately about 1,100 such Rohingya illegals. In Jammu and Kashmir, which happens to be another hotspot, particularly in Jammu, there are suspected to be as many as 10,000 Rohingyas. Telangana, again, has another approximately 6,000 Rohingya illegal migrants who've settled there. Overall, nationally, and this is also as per what the MHA had submitted to the Supreme Court back in 2017, there are suspected to be 40,000 Rohingya illegals who are living in India, and only about half of them, 20,000 of whom, are registered with the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. Meanwhile, let me now go across to our guests and start off with the political story. I'm joined by Sanju Verma, National Spokesperson of the BJP, Supriya Srinath, Congress National Spokesperson, Siddharth Sharma is Spokesperson of the Aam Aadmi Party, Sushant Sareen, Senior Fellow at Observer Research Foundation, and Suhas Chakma is Director with the Rights and Risks Analysis Group. Sanju Verma, first things first, this whole confusion started after a tweet of the Minister for Housing and Urban Development. Subsequently, he had to backtrack from that tweet. The MHA put out a clarification saying there's no such plan to grant EWS flats. I'm asking, for the benefit of our viewers, crystal clear terms. What is your position? Do you consider them illegal immigrants and therefore they're not going to get the benefits that Indian citizens are getting, and therefore no question of EWS flats or police protection or what have you, what the Minister put out this morning?
You know, Zaka, you've asked me a pointed question and you will get an equally pointed response from my end with no ifs or buts whatsoever. There is a tweet from Hardeep Puri just about an hour back where he has categorically clarified in no uncertain terms that the tweet put out earlier in the afternoon by the Ministry of Home Affairs is the final word with respect to the status on Rohingyas. So for the benefit of your audience, let me break it down very quickly. Do we consider Rohingyas as illegal migrants? Yes. Is India a signatory to the UN Convention of 1951 or the Refugee Protocol of 1967? No. So does India have an obligation to house these Rohingyas? No. Why is it then that Rohingyas still continue to be there in large parts of West Bengal, Jammu, Kashmir, what have you? The simple answer to that is this. The government of India had petitioned the Supreme Court, and in April 2021, the Supreme Court, in a judgment with respect to Mohammed Saimunullah versus the Union of India, said that yes, there is no stay on the deportation of Rohingyas in Kashmir back to Myanmar, but the government of India, the Modi government in this case, has to follow the due process by engaging with Myanmar, which incidentally has already agreed that these Rohingyas will be treated as bona fide citizens in Myanmar. So we are in the process of deporting them back. There's no confusion on that front.
So, Supriya Srinath, after the MHA statement in the afternoon, where they have clarified that this 1,100 people, the Rohingyas who are in Delhi, which the minister had tweeted about, are being considered as illegal immigrants. They will be kept in a detention center, not in an EWS flat. And then subsequently, once the negotiations with Myanmar conclude, they will then be sent back to their country of origin. Now, should there be any confusion on what the national position is as far as Rohingyas are concerned?
You know, quite frankly, before I get into the details of what our national position or should or should not be, there are two things that this incident, this whole controversy, at 7:28 this morning, Hardeep Singh Puri, who is the Union Minister for Housing and Urban Development, besides being the Union Cabinet Minister for Petroleum and Natural Gas, he put out a tweet and he went on to talk about how there will be EVS homes, how they will be shifted to this area in Delhi, there will be basic amenities, there will be UNHCR IDs, Delhi police protection. He is not some sidey character in the government. He is the man who is responsible for urban housing and development. He puts out a tweet, it's a thread tweet. He also takes pot shots at canards of anti-CA and all of that. That is a separate debate. Now here is a cabinet minister directly whose portfolio affects what he is writing. EWS, Delhi protection, UNHCR cards, basic amenities, all of that. At 2:50, we get an MHA statement that completely contradicts it. It's a three-thread tweet which essentially says news reports about these are misleading, they are incorrect. But the news report did not start on its own. It started when the Union Minister for Urban Development tweeted this. Now he may change his position. My bigger concern is that on issues as sensitive and as important as this, the right arm of the government doesn't know what the left is doing. The right arm of the government doesn't know what the position of the government on this is. It's been 3 years since this whole pot was stirred on CAA. The government still wants more time to frame rules. I mean, let's get out of our closets and let's understand what is happening. There is absolute lack of governance.
Okay.
This is nothing. This points to the left arm not knowing what the right is doing.
Sanju Verma,
and quite frankly, governance cannot be done like this.
A quick response. This has been hanging fire. CAA, NRC. You know, the bill was passed, I think, before COVID happened, but the rules have still not been notified. And the BJP was at the forefront of this issue. Why then have the rules not been notified? And what explains this back and forth between what the minister tweeted today and what the MHA clarification was?
You know, Zaka, I completely condemn this baseless and frivolous allegation by the Congress panelists that, you know, the left arm does not know what the right arm is doing. Obviously, an electorally vanquished opposition has no political or moral credibility left apart from grandstanding on television debates. You know, Supriya Srinath does nothing more. Coming to your important point, yes, the CAA rules need to be notified. I will say that without ifs and buts. And Nityanand Rai, the MOS home, I remember late 2020 had said that that would be done, by, end of 2021 or so. That has been hanging fire, but I'm sure we had assembly elections coming in, though of course that's not an excuse, but I'm sure it will be brought to fruition very soon. And it is because the government works in a coordinated manner that within a couple of hours of Hardeep Puri's tweet, the final word by the MHA came out.
Let me now go to the other guests who are also there on the broadcast. Siddharth Sharma of the Aam Aadmi Party. Siddharth Sharma, while your leaders and spokespersons have come out and said that this whole thing was done in a meeting convened by the LG on the 29th of July, the question that's being, and that the Chief Minister or the Deputy Chief Minister did not have a clue about it, question that's being asked is, number one, how are many of these people, including many of these people who are illegal Rohingya migrants who are accused in the Jahangirpuri riots, how do they have Aadhaar cards? How do they have Aam Aadmi Party government given, free electricity and water supply and so on, and connections to their houses? All of this is basically, I mean, they're doing this sitting here in the National Capital Territory of Delhi.
Yeah, Zaka, your question has a context here. That this whole debate has started because of a tweet storm by a very respectable cabinet minister. To your pointed question, first I'll answer to your pointed question. How did the Rohingyas come from Myanmar or Burma to Delhi? Did they come through a tunnel or something? Isn't it the government of India's job to stop them at the border? That question has to be asked by Mr. Zaka Jacob to Ms. Sanju Verma. She would have to answer to that. As far as Aam Aadmi Party is concerned, we have been very unequivocal for many years that Rohingyas are illegal migrants and they have no place in India, especially in Delhi, because we have a government in Delhi. Delhi is breaking as it seems. Delhi has enough population to handle itself. Now, as far as this today's tweet is concerned, today's debate is concerned, today's dichotomy is concerned, one very, very important minister of Modi ji's cabinet says that Rohingyas are refugees in India. Within hours, another very senior minister says that the Rohingyas are illegal migrants. Now the BJP has to come clear, although Ms. Sanju Verma has already disowned Hardeep Puri's first tweet, so the poor Mr. Hardeep Puri must be squirming in his tweets right now. So anyway, BJP has to come clear whether they consider Rohingyas as illegal migrants.
No, but that's been clarified by the Home Ministry. I don't think there is a bigger statement within the BJP. Mr. Sharma, I don't think there is a bigger statement within the BJP than what the Home Ministry clarification is. They have clarified that they, as far as Home Ministry is concerned, they are illegal migrants to be deported.
Exactly. That essentially means that Sanju Verma is accepting, the BJP is accepting that Mr. Hardeep Puri was speaking out of turn, and he is a very senior minister of the cabinet. That goes on to show that the Modi government actually doesn't know what it is doing. There is something called as substance, and there is something called as show. The Modi government speaks a lot about security, but it doesn't know that the security word doesn't have the alphabet N-A-M-O in it. N-A-M-O doesn't occur in security. So the issue of security is a very important issue. And one thing that there is a lot of things being discussed. And one thing that I like to highlight today here is that just last week in Cambodia, the External Affairs Minister of India and the External Affairs Minister of India and the Secretary of State of US, Mr. Antony Blinken, had a meeting in Cambodia just last week. And it is the readout said that they had discussed Burma, the issue of Burma. Now, this Mr. Hardeep Singh Puri has also been a career diplomat. The question we have to ask is, does this have any connotation between them? Because 1 week ago, you speak about Burma in Cambodia, and 1 week later, a career diplomat tweets that they are going to be given residences in Delhi, and then within a few hours, the government backtracks.
It's two separate ministries, it's two separate ministers, it's two separate issues. But anyway, I want to go to Sushant Sareen and to Suhas Chakma, please, with your permission. With your permission, the point, Sushant Sareen. No, one second. With your permission, there are two other guests waiting. Sushant Sareen, India is not a signatory to the United Nations Refugee Convention of 1951. So India is neither legally or morally obliged to house the Rohingya illegal immigrants. Now, India is a country with a large population. We have limited resources. There is hardly enough to serve our own people. Are we in a position to take on this extra burden of 20 or 30 or 40,000 people? And it also brings to question and brings to light this whole double standard that we saw, the protests around the CAA, that if today a minister is saying we're going to build EWS flats and that's been climbed down on, or that's been backtracked by the government, then what was the whole hoo-ha-ha about CAA?
You're quite right, Zaka. And in fact, this whole controversy today, or rather, let's call it a gaffe, which has happened. Now, either, there was a complete breakdown of communication between the various ministries, or it was decided that they're going to go ahead with this particular scheme, which Mr. Puri announced. And then they realized that the political fallout of it will be extremely damaging, and then they backtracked. Either which way, I think it's been an embarrassing kind of a situation which has been created. But look, there are many countries in the world which are signatories to those conventions and which are even much more unfortunate than India in terms of, the resources available and all of that. And yet they are obliged to provide, refuge to migrants or refugees who come into their countries. So I don't think that is such a big issue. For me, the bigger issue is that, one, how do you allow 40,000 people to come into your country over the years? It's not happened overnight. It's happened over the years, number one. Number two, why do we even bother about 40,000? As your own report is telling us about, the number of migrants, the complete demographic transition which has taken place in the northeast along the borders of West Bengal with Bangladesh, the Simanchal area. There's a complete demographic transition which has taken place, and it has taken place under the eyes of the political leadership. It has taken place under the eyes of the security agencies, and again, over the years, over at least a couple of decades now. And we've been sleepwalking through this disaster which is there in the making. Then this whole virtue signaling that people who are pointing fingers at us on CAA, I don't know why the government of India needs to be embarrassed over a law like the CAA, which was an extremely good law and extremely progressive law, giving, legal status to people who are religiously persecuted in the neighboring countries. I don't know why this virtue signaling was being done. What was the purpose of it? Is the BJP not convinced that the CAA was a right law and that they needed to stand their ground no matter what anybody said? And 99.9% of the people in the world have never even read that damn law. Then, of course, I think one of your panelists made the correct point that it's been 3 years. You have still not notified the rules. Why? What is the excuse for not doing that?
Okay.
I think the government has to be answerable for those questions.
Suhas Chakma, the question that's being asked is, even a country like Bangladesh has asked Myanmar to take back the Rohingya illegal migrants. They are not showing any kind of, visible brotherhood sign or anything of that sort with the Rohingyas, and they're saying that, these are not our people. We have too many people of our own and we don't have the resources to cater to yours, so take them back. In fact, this has become a long-standing issue between Myanmar and Bangladesh. The question is, why should India adopt these illegal migrants? And number two, the question also which Sushant asked, how were 40 or 50,000 people allowed to come into India over a period of time, settle in places like Jammu in the north, Telangana in the south, and somehow, they are able to get all kinds of documentation, all kinds of Indian government documentation, whether it's Aadhaar card or electricity bills and so on and so forth. Those questions need to be asked as well. And for a country that's not a signatory to the UN Convention on Refugees, why is India obliged to do any of this in the first place?
No, I think in the first place, whether India ratifies a particular convention or not, it is not necessary for the government of India to accept, legally implement it. There are many conventions ratified by India, and the government of India doesn't give a hoot when it comes to implementation. The second issue is, when it comes to repatriation of the Rohingyas, I think the government of India and the government of Bangladesh, they live in some kind of illusion. I mean, delusional mentality that the government of Myanmar will accept the Rohingya refugees. There will be processes between New Delhi and Yangon, or then the people will be taken back. Never forget that in 1963, 300,000 Indians were thrown out by the Myanmar government. These were the people who were actually taken or who had settled down during the British period. We didn't stand up at that point of time. Had we stood up at that point of time, I don't think the Rohingya issue would have come up. You would see that every decade Myanmar commits atrocities and expels, about 1 million Rohingyas, and they never go back. And the biggest problem is none of the countries which receive Rohingya refugees, they do not document the refugees, and you do not provide the platform to document these refugees. So therefore, you do not know whether there are 4,000, 40,000 or even 4 lakhs. If you do not create the legal framework where people could come and apply for refugee or asylum, then you are not going to determine. So you say they are not refugees, they are illegal immigrants. Tell me under which law in this country a refugee is defined? There is no law. Anybody who is a foreigner and comes into this country without visa is an illegal immigrant. So the terminologies which are being used by the BJP or the government or anybody that these are illegal immigrants, these are refugees, is absolute nonsense. It doesn't exist when it comes to legal framework. So the final question which I wanted to say is that if you do not document or do not provide the security or some identification document, at no point of time you are going to be able to actually talk to the government of Myanmar. And therefore, what do you have? You basically have 1 or 2 Rohingya refugees being sent back from Mori or elsewhere. Now there are about, say, 30,000 Chin refugees who have come to Mizoram, including the former Chief Minister of Chin land province in Myanmar. And you are not saying anything. You don't tell me that only the Rohingyas pose a security threat. Now look at the Khadar port and look at the security apparatus which is operated by the Chin National Army as well as the Arakan Army in that front, where Indian security forces and Indian engineers are kidnapped, and you are talking about the Rohingya refugees only. See, you cannot ensure security unless you document them first, and unless you document them first, you will not have any clue.
Sanju Verma, to respond, I mean, the basic prerequisite is that whoever people come into India and whatever means they come into India, shouldn't they be documented in a way that tomorrow, even if you're negotiating with Myanmar to take these folks back, you have something to show that they are not Indian citizens? But if they have Aadhaar cards and electricity bills, why should Myanmar take them back?
Zaka, I heard all the panelists, and I'll just quickly make a couple of points for the benefit of your audience. Point number 1, let us not forget that India is a union of states, and we also have states who need to own up to some responsibility. Let me be very honest with you. The Aam Aadmi Party gave a whole long laundry list of what the BJP should or should not do. I clearly remember even after the Supreme Court verdict of April 2021, when the Honorable Court said that there is no stay on the deportation of Rohingyas, there was a press conference by Manish Sisodia where he actually applauded Amanatullah Khan, your MLA from Okhla, who said that we will continue to give free electricity, free water. After all, every Rohingya tent just costs 7 lakh rupees per month. So I want to ask a question to the Aam Aadmi Party. Why is it that you're running foul of the diktat of the apex court of the land and harboring the Rohingyas, and then you come on national television and sing a completely different tune? Point number 2, Sushant Sareen made a very important point that the number of illegal migrants which we have, particularly Rohingyas, it's happened in the last 8 years, Zaka. It's not happened under Narendra Modi alone. It has happened over the last 20, 30 odd years. And I remember clearly prior to the Assam election, Amit Shah made a very important statement when he was asked if this government is serious about sending not just Rohingyas but illegal Bangladeshis back. He said we are doing it, and that is precisely the reason, because we are achieving success on that front, that 30% of Assam, which was under AFPA, now AFPA has been taken off. And he also said that 10,000 bighas of illegally encroached land are now free of illegal migrants. So the government is not twiddling its thumbs, it is doing the needful.
Siddharth Sharma respond. Sanju Verma saying the government is not twiddling its thumb.
Can I please come in for a minute?
One second, Supriya, 1 second. Siddharth Sharma, also, what about the responsibility of state governments? She did not name West Bengal, but I presume that she's talking about West Bengal, where there is absolutely no distinction between who is an Indian citizen and who is not, because everybody, like I said, has documentation to prove one way or the other that they have Government of India given documents. Siddharth Sharma.
Yeah, Zaka, Sanju has to understand that, Zaka, Sanju has to understand that as far as Delhi is concerned, the law and order, the police, etc. Everything falls under BJP, and they are answerable to all those questions. The question still stands, like Mr. Suhas asked or Sushant asked, that how do so many thousands and lakhs, maybe lakhs of Rohingyas. Come on, Sanju. Chill out.
You are giving them free electricity.
Let me speak. When you are speaking, I was keeping quiet. Let's have a very decent kind of a debate.
On national
Okay.
Don't be a hypocrite.
Like our
Don't be a
experts in the
hypocrite.
panel said, the moot question here is that how come thousands and lakhs of Rohingyas have entered India through porous borders? That has to be answered by the central government. Now, as far as the Union of States argument is concerned, Union of States arguments would hold good on other states, but not Delhi, because in Delhi, the law and order situation, the police, etc., fall under the central government. As far as Aam Aadmi Party is concerned, we have been very clear that Delhi taxpayers' money cannot be spent on Rohingyas, even 1 penny, and they have to be deported back as per the Supreme Court's order.
Okay.
Now, how many, the simple question here, Zaka, I am asking through you to the BJP spokesperson, is that in light of the Supreme Court standing order that Rohingyas have to be deported, that Supreme Court order was passed in April 2021. Now, today is August 2022, nearly 1.5 years later. How many Rohingyas have been deported from India to the Myanmar?
Okay, no, Supriya also wanted to come in, but I think Sushant's point is well taken, that this has not happened over the last 2 or 3 years, so it's not happened just because the pandemic came. This has been happening for the last 20 years, and whether UPA was in power or NDA was in power, we have not formulated a policy on how to deal with these illegal immigrants. Supriya, one second, Siddharth, 1 second, please yield. Yeah,
Let me complete.
Supriya, yeah.
I have a very simple question to ask of the ruling BJP this evening. What is your stand on CAA? In the West Bengal elections, your manifesto said on day 1 of the government, the BJP will approve implementation of CAA. In the Assam election, your manifesto is dead silence. There is no, keep quiet, not a mention of the CAA. I want to understand. What is your stand on CAA? Zaka, I kept quiet. This is no way to debate.
Ma'am, 1 second. Sanju, please. Yeah, the question was to Supriya. Let her finish. I'll come back to you and give you an adequate time. Supriya, yes, go on.
You can call me names. You can call me whatever. This country wants to know. You want to implement CAA in West Bengal on day 1 if you are elected. In Assam, your manifesto doesn't mention the word CAA. What is your stand on it?
No,
what for the 3 years are you doing?
The Congress party voted. The Congress party voted against CAA in both houses. The Congress party voted against CAA in both the houses.
I don't think you understand my question. Zaka, I don't think you followed my question. I'm asking the BJP what is their stand.
I have followed your question.
West Bengal manifesto में CAA लगाएंगे, असम में CAA नहीं लगाएंगे. Stand क्या है बीजेपी का? वो कब बताएंगे? 3 साल से CAA का कानून क्यों नहीं बनाया? वो कब बताएंगे?
I asked that question to Sanju Verma. I'll ask her that again. But Supriya, let's remind our viewers.
As a television anchor,
Congress party had voted against CAA in both houses of Parliament, and said that you are unequivocally standing with the protesters in Shaheen Bagh. This was your party's position. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I am saying so. Absolutely. And I put my hand on my heart. My stand on an issue does not change about which state is going to election. We are anti-CAA. We are anti what this government is trying to do, instill fear in the minds of a section of our population.
So do you have a stand? And I'm asking this. I'll circle back to Sanju Verma. But do you have a stand on how these illegal immigrants who are not Indian citizens have come into this country over the last 10, 15, 20 years and have managed to get all kinds of government documentation? Do you have a stand on what needs to be done with them? Do they need to be sent back to their country of origin? Do they need to be given UNHCR tag and taken in as refugees? What is the Congress party and Supriya Srinath's stand as far as these 40-50,000 people are concerned?
May I come in, Zaka?
Yeah.
I find it absolutely ridiculous
You know,
for you
Zaka,
to ask
Supriya
my
made a
stand
lengthy-
when I have said it in
No,
no uncertain
no.
terms. We
May
are
I please rebut?
anti-CAA. But what is their stand? Ruling
May I
party का
please
क्या
rebut?
stand है वो लोगों को कब पता चलेगा?
Supriya has
30
been
साल से
ranting
कानून
on
क्यों नहीं
you.
चला? वो लोगों को कब पता चलेगा?
I
That is
asked
what we
you a
want to
different
know.
question.
Can
You
I
are
please
evading
rebut?
that question. Fair enough.
Supriya is ranting
Fair enough.
non-stop.
Okay, Sanju Verma, respond. Supriya has asked
I am not
a
evading the
pertinent
question. I answered your
You
question
said
in no
one
uncertain
thing in
terms.
Assam, one thing in Bengal, and now 3 years later you still haven't notified CAA. Sanju Verma.
Zaka, let me be very clear. And I'm happy that I'm not being heckled. We are going to notify the rules pertaining to CAA. Has there been a delay? Yes. But are we going to go back on a commitment? No. And I also want to say one more thing, that the Modi government has asked Aam Aadmi Party to declare the current residence area at Kanchan Kunj, where the Rohingyas are staying, as a detention center, which the Aam Aadmi Party refuses to do. But the Modi government is not going to brook any intolerance. I think the fact that there will be 24/7 police patrolling and they will be given UNHRC cards means that the police is going to completely ensure that there is no security threat, because their movement is going to be controlled by the police. And I think this is a positive sign, because they will not have Aadhaar cards, they will not have ration cards, they will only have access to alien cards, which is the first step towards deportation. But
Okay, I got to wrap up. I'm completely out of time, but I'll leave it at that. I'll see how this story plays out in all the mired politics between AAP and BJP and Congress. Let's be very, very clear. These are national issues and we need to take a national position on these issues, which unfortunately so far we have not. But anyway, I'm going to move on to the other big story that we've been tracking. This is an out-and-out political story. A little over a year after he was removed as Chief Minister of Karnataka, B.S. Yediyurappa has made a big political comeback. The Lingayat strongman has now been included in the BJP's highest decision-making body, the Parliamentary Board. The move comes just months before Karnataka goes to polls. So has Yediyurappa become indispensable to the BJP and its chances in Karnataka?
Our Prime Minister's expectation is I must build up the party in South India, and also we must come back power in the Karnataka.
It has given a very big boost for BJP in Karnataka. All the workers are very happy. The people of Karnataka are also very happy.
But if you are strong, if you had repeated a government, why would they have removed it?
All right, let's go straight across to our guest, Mohan Krishna, as Karnataka BJP spokesperson, Nagaraju Yadav, Karnataka Congress spokesperson. Mr. Mohan Krishna, I'll start with you. When he was removed last year, Mr. Yediyurappa, what we were given to understand is that he's over 75 years of age. He needs to make way for a new leadership, a younger leadership in your party and in the government in Karnataka, only for it to change 1 year on. Today, Mr. Yediyurappa is back in the highest decision-making body of your party. What's changed, sir, in the last 1 year?
Zaka, very good evening to you. Zaka, you should you should correct your statement. He has not been removed. He offered himself to quit and get it down from the chief ministerial post.
Okay.
Because he wanted to be a different one, Mr. Yediyurappa. Today, I would like to tell you something very important. Our Prime Minister, Honorable Prime Minister Mr. Modi, in his August 15th speech, Independence Day speech at Red Fort, he categorically said, we should have a kind of an atmosphere to fulfill the aspirations of the people of the country. Today, you find a place for a person who can fulfill the aspirations of the Karnataka as well as for the country.
Sir, but he would have been in a position to fulfill aspirations last year also. What happened then?
Yes, we have to give chance to younger generations to take care. He is at the highest level today, Mr. Zaka. We should understand that. He is not a chief minister of Karnataka. As a chief minister of Karnataka, he is taking care of national level now, and his responsibility would be to take care of the South. Probably that might be the interest of Honorable Prime Minister Mr. Modi. Let me tell you another one important issue.
Quickly,
I was looking at the promo of viewers. Is BSY indispensable or BJP for BJP? BSY is indispensable. Let me tell you, BSY and BJP goes together. It was a short time wherein he had taken a harsh decision to get away from BJP. And that's how the Congress was able to come to power. Let me prove that point to you. I was telling you the same thing. 2013 was different. 2023 is different. I'm telling you honestly, Zaka, it is not just a booster for the cadre for the BJP.
Nagaraju Yadav, say what you may, but the fact is that today, after this decision, the BJP appears to be a more cohesive, more united house, unlike the Congress, many would say, where even this past week, there have been public statements between Mr. Siddaramaiah and Mr. D.K. Shivkumar, despite Rahul Gandhi coming to Davangere a few days ago, and saying that we should believe in collective leadership and unseat the BJP. The infighting is still continuing in your party.
First thing, good evening to all of you all. And first thing, I congratulate Mr. BSY to get to position of parliamentary board member and election committee or campaign committee in BJP. Anyway, that is, he's a senior leader of Karnataka, and that should be complimented. That is fair enough. Now the issue of politics comes. He says that our BJP spokesperson was talking, saying that he is voluntarily resigning, giving chance to the younger people. Then why did he cry in the floor of the house, in the place where he was planning to resign? This is not the one is accepted. That kind of lies people of Karnataka will not believe, Karnataka will not believe. That is their own internal party affair, but definitely we know that he was sidelined because they had a rule of their own rule of saying that 75 years aged person will not be given any responsibility of decision making. They were supposed to be an advisory board. But today, overnight, they changed the entire decision of 75 years and they gave him a place. That may be a BJP party internal issues of BJP or internal decisions of BJP. But today, what I'm trying to tell you is, in Karnataka politics, Yediyurappa had to come back. Yediyurappa had to get importance because of Siddaramaiah's birthday program could give them a shocking news to them, saying that the people of Karnataka are going against BJP and the masses are coming towards Congress, and we expected 10 lakh people. There was more than 15 lakh people had come.
But
that
sir, how does that explain, sir, how does that explain the infighting within your party? Whether 5 lakh people came or 10 lakh people came, how is that stopping the infighting within your party?
Now I answered the question of BJP. Now the question of your question to connect it to Siddaramaiah Sahab and Shivkumar Sahab. I'm trying to tell you that 100% we believe in a collective leadership. We don't have any difference of opinion. Few selected media trying to make such statement, which is not true, which was proved and told in front of 15 lakh people in Davangere by Siddaramaiah and DK by saying that we are one and we'll fight together.
Sir, but that collective leadership is not reflecting on the ground. The question is, why doesn't the Congress party just decide that this person, XYZ, whoever it is going to be our chief ministerial candidate? Simple.
No. We don't have habitual of, except one or two states in Punjab and other places. We don't have an habit of announcing a chief ministerial candidate before the election. We believe in a collective leadership. We believe in all sections of society to come to power when
Mohan Krishna, not like there was an unsaid rule in your party that by 75, people move up to what is called the Margdarshak Mandal. That's what happened to Mr. Advani. That's what happened to Mr. Murli Manohar Joshi. And that is what we were told when Mr. Yediyurappa was also, stepped down as chief minister last year. Suddenly, 75 is not a marker anymore. He can be part of the highest decision-making body of your party despite being more than 75. In fact, it's not just him. I believe there's one other person, Mr. Jatia, who's also over 75.
Jatia.
Yes.
Zaka, I would like to remind you of two things here. Margadarshak Mandal doesn't mean that we should not take the advice of the people being in position or in the highest position. Only thing is, the party has requested to relinquish the position what they are, and if the party requires, and they can to take it, one thing. And if you take an example of Mr. Advani, Mr. Lal Krishna Advani, at the age of 85 also, he was in the parliamentary board. What's wrong in that? Are you not aware of that, Zaka? Why? Let me tell you. This Congress people
basically BJP spokesperson has to answer why was Yediyurappa
Nagraj
crying
Yadav,
when
I
he
did not
resigned?
disturb you. I did not
No,
intervene.
I'm asking you.
Behave the way as you have to behave, please.
Please, I don't have to learn from you. I don't have to learn from BJP.
Well, one second, one at a time. Let him finish. Let him finish, Mr. Yadav. I'll come to you. But let Mr. Krishna finish, please. Sir, please, sir. I request both of you, your senior spokespersons.
Why did Yediyurappa
No. I will. But your senior spokespersons. Please answer the question, Mr. Krishna. Why did Mr. Yediyurappa cry on the floor of the House on the day he resigned?
It was not a cry. Even Mr. Modi has cried on the floor and many times. Are we not human beings, Zaka? Don't we have emotions? Don't you feel that you have served the state for so many years, 40 years plus, as an opposition leader, as a member of legislative assembly and everything, and now all of a sudden you have to leave this position because I have decided myself to leave, but the connection with the people, the emotions have
Still
come
remains.
up, busted as tears.
Okay.
What's wrong with that?
Last word, Mr.
The
Yadav.
tears
I have to
will
wrap
not
up
be
in 1
taken
minute.
as a token by
quickly,
the
please.
Congress
Final word.
to counter Yediyurappa.
Mr. Yadav, yeah, final word.
My final word is that Congress is united. We'll work collectively, and people of Karnataka are expecting a change in Karnataka state administration because law and order is not in place. People are upset with BJP, and also I'm telling you, this is a game, and they are really frightened of Congress getting united, and they bought Yediyurappa thinking that Lingaites will stay back with them. It is not true. The Lingaites have really.
I got to wrap up. Whether this is to unite the party, whether this is to try and stop the Congress in its tracks, whether this will consolidate the Lingayat vote in favor of the BJP, we don't know. These are all fascinating questions, the answers to which we will know over the next 1 year, or let's say in the next 6 months actually, as Karnataka prepares to and eventually goes to polls. I'm going to take a break. When we come back, it's going to be Brass Tack Superfast, including one person who was brutally assaulted in Haryana. We'll tell you why right on the other side.